Happy Vesak Day to everyone. This morning, Dhamma sharing is by Bhante, Dr. Candana Thera, entitled Breathing Life to the Dharma. Today, we are going live from the Buddhist Dhamma Dana series that we hold every week. Again, first and foremost, I wish all a happy and blessed Vesak Day. May all beings be well, be safe, happy and peaceful. Before we go further, we wish to recommend you to subscribe to the BMV Dhamma Dana series YouTube channel. There are about 170 recordings of the BMV Dhamma Dana series, where a wealth of Dhamma sharings have been uploaded here. On this blessed Vesak Day, we have the valuable opportunity to listen to an interesting topic titled Breathing Life to the Dharma. This Dhamma sharing will be conducted by Bhante, Dr. Candana Thera, who has previously given several insightful Dhamma sharings under this BMV Dhamma Dana series. He is currently based in Hawaii, a western state in the United States. Happy Buddha Day, Bhante.
Happy Vesak, yes. Lovely to see you, Carolyn.
Yeah. And welcome to our Buddhist Mahavihara Dhamma Dana series. Also wishing you good evening. It is about 3 p.m. at your time now, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay,
yes.
In Malaysia, it's about 9 a.m. And today we celebrate Vesak Day.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So we are especially appreciative and grateful to have you this morning to talk about this interesting topic, breathing life to the Dharma. Today's Dhamma sharing will be an especially meaningful one for all of us. It's conducted on Vesak Day, where we commemorate the 3 significant events of the Gautama's Buddha's life, his birthday, his enlightenment, and his passing away. And now, for those not familiar, we will give an introduction to Bhante. Bhante Dr. Candana is a bhikkhu and a student of the Dhamma for over 30 years, while teaching the Dhamma for over 2 decades. Bhante Candana has a doctorate in Buddhist ministry, as well as degrees in psychology, marriage, and family counseling, and comparative religions. Bhante Dr. Candana was born in Beirut, Lebanon, to an Armenian family. During the 17-year Lebanese Civil War, as a child, he was seriously injured. This near-death experience, with symptoms of PTSD and physical disabilities that incurred, led to the development of a keen interest in his mind to gain a better understanding of life's true purpose, as he later came to appreciate the 4 Noble Truths as taught by the Lord Buddha, especially given the constant presence of death, suffering, and impermanence at every corner of his life in Beirut. Later, having met Venerable Dr. M. Punaji Mahatero and strongly established in Bhante Dr. Candana the powerful practice of the Brahma Viharas, and specifically via the Metta Bhavana taught by the esteemed bhikkhu, who became his teachers. In addition to his academic and applied background in the Dharma and Buddhist studies, Bhante Dr. Candana has an extensive background working with patients as a clinical psychotherapist, having completed his degree and training in psychology and marriage and family therapy, while also being licensed in the state of California, USA. Thus, in addition to being a university professor, Bhante Dr. Candana has worked with underserved populations as a mental health therapist, specializing in the areas of mindfulness, relationship health, anger management, anxiety, trauma, and PTSD, eating disorders, and domestic violence, while using evidence-based interventions inspired by his daily practice of meditation. Currently based in the United States, Bhante Dr. Candana hosts meditation retreats, both in person and on Zoom with students from around the world, focusing on mindfulness, metta, and vipassana, as well as helping introduce healthier relational skills to bring happiness in people's lives while reducing their suffering through the increase in understanding. Bhante Dr. Candana has published a book on Buddhist mindfulness and lifestyle that is already available in the Buddhist Mahavihara for free distribution. To this end, Bhante Candana is also translating this work into Armenian. Now I'll hand over the studio to Bhante to begin and start this morning's Dhamma sharing. I will pass the studio now, Bhante.
Thank you very much. Happy Vesak to all of us around the world. I find it quite delightful because I get to celebrate it for 2 days. It's the 25th here in Hawaii in the United States. It's 26th of May in Malaysia. So I'll get to celebrate today and tomorrow. So before we begin, let us do the homage, the Namo Tassa, and then we'll take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Saranam Gacchāmi. Dhammaṃ Saranam Gacchāmi. Sangham Saranam Gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ Saranam Gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Dhammam Saranam Gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Sangham Saranam Gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ Saranam Gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Dhammam Saranam Gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Sangham Saranam Gacchāmi. Before the Dhamma Desana this morning, I would like to prepare the minds, our minds, to receive it. This is the old custom that Lord Buddha made available to all listeners. To prepare the mind and the heart to reach a deeper understanding of the beautiful Dhamma he shared. So I would like to ask you, if you like to close your eyes, you can leave them open as well, it doesn't matter. But just bringing the attention back to the body with a soft smile on your face. Let us bring the attention to the area around the nose where the air flows in and out, in and out. Just observing the breath without demanding anything, without controlling the breath, without holding the breath. And see if you can distinguish any differences between the inhale and the exhale. See if you can tell if the breath going in is shorter or longer Then the breath going out. Just observing the breath without expectations. Sometimes we might also be able to detect the temperature differences between the inhale and the exhale. Lord Buddha said that if we can just maintain this awareness for even a single inhale or a single exhale, we can truly touch the Dhamma, see the triple gem in ourselves, in the body, in the mind, in our hearts. So let us sit like this for a few more moments before beginning the Dhamma days. But please remember to smile to yourself. No expectations. If you notice the mind slipping away, those are the nivarana, the hindrances. That's okay. Recognize that you have left the breath and just return. No judging, no criticizing yourself. Just gently come back to the breath. Just curiously watching, observing the breath. Maintaining the awareness is what Lord Buddha called sati. And that is what you're doing now as you observe the breath. With sati, as we maintain and establish ourselves in it, opens the door for panya, wisdom. So it's very simple. Slowly, slowly. Allow your awareness to spread and see if you can notice any sensations around your body. Perhaps the point of contact with the chair, with the ground, your feet and the ground, or your hands touching. And just gently become aware of how it feels, whether there's any pressure, any heat, any tightness. And relax those areas. Open them up with a smile. As you return back to the nostrils, to your nose, and become aware of one more breath as it goes in, as it comes out. And slowly go ahead and open up your eyelids. See if you're still smiling. That is one thing that we don't get to do enough of in our lives. So you see, it's rather simple, the Dhamma, when it's applied practically. And that's what we just did. We just sat. Not too much ceremony involved. We just sat. Oftentimes when Lord Buddha gave a Dhamma talk, people's eyes would be still shut and a big fat smile on people's faces. And the heart would be completely open. And that's why we had so many people, not just monastics, but people, lay people, upasakas and upasikas, as well as other beings, divine beings, who were present, attain such lofty states of mind, liberation. Many people became arahants just by listening. So I would like to encourage you to approach the Dhamma in that fashion. Always allowing enough room in your hearts, in your minds, by putting your intellect on the shelf. Whenever you listen to a Dhamma desana, and allowing your heart, or when you're reading the suttas, so today it is a very beautiful day because as Buddhists we celebrate the holy Vesak. And the Buddha being, Lord Buddha being the pragmatic, the practical teacher that he was, he just combined them all three together. The three most poignant parts of his life. The birth of Prince Siddhartha when he was a child, obviously. His awakening, the Nibbana experience, and his Parinibbana. In order for us to appreciate the Dhamma, we need to pause and look at how Lord Buddha taught us by example. He showed us how we can establish awareness in our lives before anything else we do. or even think. Here we must remind ourselves how the only way out of suffering is to follow the Dhamma, which he taught. And at this moment, we are revering, we are venerating the Buddha on this Vesak day by establishing and maintaining our awareness. This is crucial. And throughout my talk today, I will touch on these themes: awareness, maintaining our sati, because it's important. No words could do it justice, because it's an experiential, a practical aspect, because the Dhamma is not about just preaching and studying the teachings of the Lord Buddha. That's not the Dhamma. It's practice-based. The Buddha used to make fun of those bhikkhus who would just memorize the suttas, or they would know this principle or that. He would call them empty or stupid, those bhikkhus, despite their level of knowledge, because to him it was all about practice and tasting the Dhamma. So we are celebrating Vesak today as we commemorate Lord Buddha's birth, awakening, Nibbana, and his death, Parinibbana. As I was pondering on what to share today, I had this thought. In life, we show appreciation for things we have seen and witnessed for ourselves, such as someone's love for us, a gift, maybe an offering they made, or how other people have put the effort from their lives to help us somehow, to bring us happiness. So we can show appreciation for that. We can show reverence and veneration for that. But in the absence of dedicating ourselves to the path, when we are not living mindfully with awareness, when there isn't sati, when there isn't sila being practiced, when there isn't bhavana or mental cultivation, in other words, when we have not tasted or seen the Dhamma, then how can we really be showing appreciation? And showing appreciation for what exactly? Something that others have said? Some teachers have told us? Our parents have led us, taught us to understand or to memorize, perhaps? In other words, my question is this: have we truly witnessed the joys and rewards of Sila, Samadhi, and Panya for ourselves? Let's think about this for a moment. The Dhamma Lord Buddha taught us is incomplete without practice. So we need to really appreciate the practical aspect of the Dhamma. And that is what the theme of breathing life into the Dhamma is all about. To apply Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. And not to believe in anything. See, this is why the Dhamma is incomparable to other religions out there. It has nothing to do with believing someone else's word. It is experiential. And it is to be tested and tasted for oneself. And only then can we really know what it is we are appreciating. But let's look at this. How did the Lord Buddha encourage and teach us on how to venerate him? We do have, of course, the Vandana, the worshipping through pujas, we do, the special chants, recitations, the ceremonies, etc., which are lovely, but they're rituals. We also have dana, making offerings, being generous with what we have or hold dear. It could be in finance. Most people think that dana has to be financial, but it doesn't have to be. You can give dana in the form of your dedication, your support, physical support, effort, time, energy, sharing Dhamma, or obviously supporting the Sangha in our requisites that we need to survive and to teach. There's also sila and practicing of the precepts to become virtuous in life, maintaining moral values in our lives, but not just during the Uposhata, new moon and full moon days of the month. So there are these ways of venerating the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. But we also venerate the Buddha by fulfilling our duties as children to our parents. Also as caring and loving parents to our children and to our own parents. Siblings to each other, friends to each other. We especially show our respect towards the Triple Gem by practicing metta, both to ourselves and to others. And earlier in our meditation, although we were practicing Anapanasati, the breath, mindfulness of the breath, we were also showing metta to ourselves. That's why we were smiling. We were opening the tension and tightness in the brain, in the body. Relaxing our attitude when we stop having those expectations. So these are very helpful, useful, practical ways of showing appreciation. But even more valuable than these on their own is doing all these things while being mindful all the time. What that means is checking our attitude, and especially the intentions behind our actions. Why am I giving dana? Why am I taking the 5 precepts or the 8 precepts? Why? Then why is a very powerful question. It makes us think. So checking the intentions behind our actions, are they pure? When we are taking refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, are my intentions pure? And here's another question. What is it that we take refuge in, really? What are we taking refuge in? Many of us don't even pause to consider this question. I find this to be very useful. It makes us really probe and be curious instead of blindly accepting something. Because again, this is not about blind faith. The Dhamma, the Lord Buddha taught, is not like other paths, where there's blindly believing in something. No. Even Venerable Sariputta, when he was asked / tested by this person who came in who wanted to show Lord Buddha that his students also believed in him. And Lord Buddha turns to Sariputta and says, Sariputta? And he says, yes, Bhante. Lord Buddha asks him, Sariputta, do you believe in me? And Sariputta says, oh no, Bhante, I don't believe in you. The man's jaw dropped. He knew who Sariputta was. He was the second to the Buddha in wisdom. He was the Grand Marshal, the general of the Dhamma. And he was saying, I don't believe in Lord Buddha. But He just waited a little bit longer, and he saw what Venerable Sariputta was saying. He says, no, Bhante, I don't believe in you because I have tasted, I have tested, I have witnessed the authenticity of the Dhamma you teach us. That is something we can actually take refuge in. But coming back to that question of what is it that we take refuge in really, if we are asking the heart and we're being honest, then we can see clearly how today we take refuge in our bodies, in maintaining the health of our bodies, in beautifying our bodies, in desperately trying to keep them young, the bodies, or at least try to make it look younger. And we know how successful that is, despite all the money, fortunes that people spend. We also take refuge in technology, which is very big today in the world. We take refuge in our wealth and prosperity. We take refuge in our families and loved ones. We take refuge in our properties, our phones, even our Wi-Fi, the internet. We take refuge in our food, our jobs, our careers, and our cars. And all our jealously guarded attachments that we have, which if they disappear, all hell breaks loose. If we lose any of these things, then there is havoc, there is terror, there is chaos, there is confusion. Basically, this is the attitude that properly describes what our refuge is today in the world as Buddhists. Now, when we are looking at the triple gem, to the Buddha, to the Dhamma, and to the Sangha, do we really have that kind of attitude towards the triple gem that we do, let's say, towards the phone? Imagine you lost your phone. What would happen? Or you're trying to make a very important conference call, and the Wi-Fi is down. What happens to your mind? So if we were to lose somehow the triple gem, would we panic as much as we would when we lose our phone? Our ability to travel freely? Or our health, our money? These are interesting questions that I like to ask myself and others, my students, to kind of get our bearings correctly. Because I can persuade myself, I can tell myself, I can convince myself that I'm practicing properly. But am I really, when it comes down to practicality, to reality, to honesty? So today we live in a world where there is a lot of lip service, but no action. And we know the Dhamma is all about action. We know the Dhamma is all about living life with intention. That's what makes kamma, the intention behind it. You know, in the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of the Fives, we see how Lord Buddha talks about these 5 powers, Panchabala, 5 powers. And what are they? Some of you, I'm sure, know. But just to recap, they are Saddha, faith, or Saddha. We have Hiri and Ottappa. They go hand in hand. Hiri is, I like to now translate it as wise moral shame and ottappa as wise moral consideration. They used to be called shame and fear. I kind of like to look at them as wise moral shame, where you stop from doing something because it is beneath you. It sullies your character. You feel violated if you do that. And ottappa is wise moral consideration. Those people that you respect, you value, if they were to find out that you were about to do this or even thinking this, that consideration, that, oh, no, I can't have my teacher know about this, so I shouldn't even think about this, that consideration. Next is Vidya, which is persevering energy. And then lastly is wisdom, panya. We live in a world today where there is faith, but it is misplaced. It is improperly understood or misunderstood. We have faith in technology, for example. Elon Musk wants us to go to Mars. Other people want to buy these rockets or this and go colonize somewhere else, as if we have done such a great job with this planet. Well, what are we going to be taking to the other planets? The kileshas. Greed, anger or hatred, delusion. That's what this world, these hearts of ours are infested with, and that is what we're taking up there. Meanwhile, we place our faith in what? Technology. So the faith that we have is not faith, it is misplaced. There definitely is no hiri and ottappa. We as a species today in this world have lost our sense of moral appreciation. There is no morality day by day. Well, what kind of a species are we going to be passing on to the future generations? And energy, when it doesn't have wisdom, panya, energy itself, it's like that airplane that has lost one of its wings and it is spiraling down. So you remove panya, your wisdom, everything else falls apart, especially because there is no hiri and ottappa. Without these two, there is no Dhamma. So I wanted to mention the Panchabala, the five powers. They are powers. They can give us the power to live with dignity as human beings for once. Technology is not going to save us. What is creating this technology, for example? It is lobha, dosa, moha, greed, lust, hatred, anger. We are destroying each other with the technologies that we produce. There are drones that we create. We can even give Nobel Prizes to individuals who create nuclear weapons, new powers, new chemical concoctions that can destroy millions in a split second. Our scientists today don't even have any morality. We're blindly going in this path of technology, and the blind is leading the blind. Where's that going to take us? There's no Dhamma. And then we have faith in this body, the body which is going to die, whether it's through COVID or something else. But it is guaranteed to be dying sooner or later. Around the world, I see people struggling to save this body. Since last year, I've been traveling a lot, as some of you know. I've seen people who have been doing their utmost, putting the utmost energy and power to make sure that they can somehow extend it, lengthen it, as if they know when they were going to die or then when they will die. But hush, hush, silently, they know that every one of us is going to die. So Meanwhile, the Buddha is sitting there, urging us to practice mindfulness of the breath. So simple. Or loving kindness, metta bhavana, where we can start and live. We can start testing and tasting the Dhamma and see it in our lives. But we must first pause and consider this. But instead, we hesitate whether this is really something that we want to invest our energy in or time. Well, what kind of a refuge is this then that we are taking? So what we're seeing around us is us, human beings, becoming slaves to the kileshas. And this bag of kileshas called the body that we haul and drag around, this bag of bones. Ultimately, that's what it is. Despite the fact that we try to make it beautiful, put makeup or look, put lotion or go to the gym and keep it healthy. And then what happens? Anicca, impermanence. It's unstable. It is unreliable. Because we've neglected to consider what this body is for. We call it the rare human birth for a reason. And this is where the Dhamma comes in. Again, Lord Buddha gave us not just the truth of dukkha. He gave us two things. He showed us the presence of dukkha, but he also showed us nirodha, liberation from dukkha. And that's where this body comes in as a rare thing. Because it allows us to break free from this vicious cycle of birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. See, I have to take another breath but that's what we keep doing. That's what we keep doing. So what can we do? We can start by training ourselves in Sila, Samadhi, Panya. Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. These are called the three trainings. Sila in the form of the precepts. I've had students who wanted me to be their teacher coming, and in a way, in many different ways, they've wanted me to see that they are not so crazy about practicing Sila. Or can't I just close an eye or two to at least skipping one or two of these 5 precepts? Let's say when it comes to intoxicants, things that delude the mind, alcohol, this, that. I said no. How about sexual relations? I said no. How would you like it if someone does that to your own partner without you knowing? And you can see they're changing of the face. So as we get to taste and witness the Dhamma, we start to really strive in the right direction. And that I see to be the best way to venerate Lord Buddha, not just during Vesak, but every day. It would be a shame to just celebrate Vesak once a year. It's not fair. There were tears of joy at the birth of Prince Siddhartha, Lord Buddha. There were devas there. And they were holding as the baby came out. They said, we want to welcome, we want to be the first ones before human beings. Yes, our Lord is going to be a human being, but at the very least we can offer him this safety. And they draw this lovely veil, if you will. And that's where the baby was taken in by these 4 devas. There were tears of joy everywhere. There were tears of joy also at the awakening of Lord Buddha. And there were tears also at the death or the parinibbana of Lord Buddha, both by human and non-human beings. Mindfully engaging in life with the guidance of the Dhamma never fails to bring tears of joy to both our hearts and to our eyes. That is the gift. And what a gift! What a gift is the Dhamma that Lord Buddha left us with. Vaya Dhamma Sankhara Appamadena Sampadeta. Conditioned things are going to perish. They are perishable, unstable, unreliable. Strive with diligence and you will succeed. What a guarantee that is. So how do we do it? How do we breathe life into the Dhamma? After all, this is the theme that I chose for this Dhamma Desana. In reality, Dhamma is. It always is. The Buddhas merely discover it. When at a time, they show up at a time when it absolutely is gone, the dispensation of the previous Buddhas. It's no more there. But the Dhamma itself is always there. So we can't touch it. We can't, when I suggested this title of breathing life into the Dhamma, we're talking about the teachings of Lord Buddha that he has left us in our safekeeping. What he discovered, what he showed us, what he taught us. But his teachings do have a lifespan. They do have, not to trivialize, they do have a shelf life. And what really is a crucial factor here is the practice part of it, the practicality of it. Meaning, specifically, how much are we engaged in making it a practical aspect of our lives? Are we engaged in it? Otherwise, it is disappearing. It was disappearing. It began disappearing from the moment Lord Buddha uttered those words. So let us bring in the Dhamma Satcha, the truths of the Dhamma, into our lives, and not follow this power-hungry ways of the world, of living with greed, of hatred, and withholding our love for each other, from each other, and losing our faith in the goodness and living with virtue. And here I have to mention that to wait for a future Buddha in order to apply and dedicate ourselves then fully to the practice of Dhamma is simply stupid. It is irresponsible, and it is also disrespectful to Lord Buddha and the Arya Savakas, the Arahant disciples, who compassionately and selflessly have been giving and giving from their lives to us, teaching us to this day to do good deeds by making offerings only to attain some heavenly rebirth after we die is also disrespectful towards the sasana, because that would mean that somehow the teachings of Lord Buddha are somehow insufficient, inadequate. Basically, they are not enough to help us live happy lives here on this planet. But is that true? It's like those people who want to leave this planet and go and colonize somewhere else and pass on the germs, the kileshas, to the rest of the cosmos without first fixing it here. So let us first live our lives with dignity, with the practice of understanding by removing avidya, ignorance, from our hearts. So the Buddha always discouraged and shunned such ideas of saving up by, wanting to get a future celestial rebirth by doing these generous acts, when Nibbana is staring at us in the face, right here in this life. Because I don't know if next time you and I show up, will there be a Dhamma? Chances are no, the way things are going. So what is killing the Dhamma today? By the Dhamma, I mean the teachings today, is our complacency, our laziness in wanting to test the validity for ourselves and applying the medicine of the Dhamma to heal our sickness of avidya from our hearts. So what I'm encouraging you all here is it's more of a challenge to recheck the reasons what we come looking for when we come to the Dhamma. The Buddha says, Jayata, Mapamadata, Mapaccha Vipatisarino, Ahuvata. Sit, meditate to reach that stability of mind, the collectedness of mind, that samadhi. Do not be negligent, otherwise you will only end up being full of regrets. The Buddhas appear in the world very rarely, and it is only out of their compassion that they come to share their teaching, and only at a time period when the sasana is lost, completely disappeared. So the best way to venerate and revere Lord Buddha, and when we say Lord Buddha, we also mean the Dhamma, and when we say the Dhamma, we also mean the Sangha. When we venerate and show our appreciation, a love for Lord Buddha on this Vesak day, we're trying to identify the need for responsible awareness and bring sati, that mindfulness, into our lives as a consistent reality, bringing that sense of awareness and placing it there on a consistent basis, bringing sati into our choices of thoughts, words, and actions with our body. Here we can start from the simple act of consciously becoming aware, like we did earlier with the breath, to know the breath, what the Buddha taught in the Anapanasati Sutta, mindfulness of the breath. And that is enough. We don't have to complicate things. Sometimes people think, oh, Bhante, it's so vast, the Dhamma is so vast, I cannot possibly reach Nibbana. And I said, who said that? Most of the people who became Arahants or even Sotapannas were illiterate. They didn't know their ABCs. But whatever they did know, they stuck to it. So even if you can just focus on the breath, practice just metta, that's it. You don't have to worry about the rest. Practice your sila, practice your bhavana. Just one thing, don't complicate things. Even if you're just focusing on the pujas, bring your mindfulness into the puja, into your dana. And everything else will be coming into focus. Things will turn into worthwhile realities. Lord Buddha penetrated the truth, and he knew it directly. He knew it. He understood things directly. Between distinguishing what is liberation and what is suffering. Today, we're confused. We're looking at suffering and we are saying this is liberation. Oh no. Relying on other things, taking refuge in the body is not liberation. He taught us that we too could come to experience and taste what he and the Arya Savakas have tasted and continue to do so today. It is in this manner that we can truly pay tribute and show our love and appreciation for our great teacher, the very best man, the best of all men, all beings, the incomparable, loving teacher who gave us the Dhamma nearly 2,600 years ago. Because only then, with the purification of our actions, through choosing the wholesome in our thoughts, in our words, in our bodily actions, that we get to truly be and stay Buddhists, and therefore pay our gratitude to Lord Buddha, whose light outshines the entirety of all the suns and moons, star systems, constellations combined, along with all the brilliance, the radiance of all the Brahmas in the heavens and the Devas, all put together. Their brilliance is nothing compared to the brilliance of Lord Buddha. But if we refuse to live mindfully by choosing our actions, then we remain as mere putujanas, ordinary, uneducated, even with PhDs, but very uneducated when it comes to the science of life. Then that is what the Dhamma is. So unless we live truthfully, then we are mere putujanas who are in the business of venerating not Lord Buddha, but the kileshas or the defilements. So let's do that. Let's walk away from the kileshas. Let's walk along with the Dhamma, applying the teachings of Lord Buddha every step of the way, however long our lives are, hand in hand with the Dhamma, keeping it alive in our hearts and for many generations to come. So I will stop here and open for any questions, and see Sister Carolyn, we can go ahead and address those.
Okay, Bhante. Actually, been listening, and thank you very much for the very enlightening and interesting talk today. Myself have learned a few new areas in Dhamma sharing this morning. Now let's go through the Q&A section from the Facebook, and we see if there's any questions from the audience. Yeah, I will flash it if there's any. Wait, let's see. Today, a lot of people are wishing Bhante happy Vesak Day. I'm scrolling a lot of, yeah, like really a lot. So, okay, there is one question. Says here, Bhante, we all know death is inevitable. As Buddhists, is it a moral obligation that we have to take vaccinations to overcome the current pandemic? I think this whole virus thing is quite crippling, to a lot of people in the society, and we are still in a lockdown, Bhante, in a way, in Malaysia, because the numbers, the stats are very high in our parts, and vaccinations has been still quite low. So here the question is, as a Buddhist, is it a moral obligation that we have to take vaccinations?
The only obligation, if I can call it that, as Buddhists or as a being, is going back to the 3 trainings: Sila, Samadhi, Panya. Now, when it is part of a law of a country, of course, the Buddha always advised us to adhere to the legal requirements of where we live, and to abide by those. However, having said that, having acknowledged that, the Buddha always placed the responsibility. He was the first when it came to individual responsibility. And that starts with doing our own research. There's a lot of things that are being said. I myself have heard a lot of contradictory information. And I have taught science for over 10 years as a high school teacher. So I'm very familiar with the scientific method and how to gather data and how to form a hypothesis to begin with, how to conduct the research, how to conduct the experiment, and how to gather the information and how to publish. So some of these papers that I've seen, the articles that are often quoted, when you look at their conclusions, they're not conclusive about any side. So as far as the moral obligation, so long as my choice is not impinging on your choice to get vaccinated or not, then it's okay. But again, the bottom line is, I think, to take the individual responsibility, oneself, of maintaining healthy practices, taking care of oneself and one's loved ones, interactions with people, and also doing the necessary mental hygiene. What I mean by that is to shut the negative influx of news, because what I'm noticing is people have become blind believers in what is being advertised on the news. And usually it is in the form of negative information. So if I were to be in power and placing my words and my intentions, my own agenda, let's say, in front of this major news anchor in this major media individual entity, and you're just waiting to take whatever I say, essentially that's what would be happening, because it's my words that they are transferring to your ears. You would be just taking them as a sponge. That is where I will bring in the moral obligation of a Buddhist to question that. To question that and say, no, 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 no. I will do my own research. Unfortunately, over 80% of the population of the planet, if not in the 90s, is not doing this. They're just following what is being said. And you have the other extreme, which basically sometimes they're just saying, I'm immune completely. And that's another form of being reckless. So there is, we call this the Majjhima Pada. We call this the middle path. So I wouldn't want you to just expect or accept whatever's coming from me as the truth. We need to do our own due diligence and do our own research, and then come to our own responsibly taken decision. That is what I would offer, given the sensitivity of the question, I would say, and still maintain a level of relevancy. So I hope that satisfies. Another question?
Thank you, Bhante. This is what you're sharing is do not take things at face value, but have an investigative mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because especially at this period where there's a lot of misinformation, so I think more so we have to have the ability to discern what is right and what's wrong. Bhante, I have a few more questions. Okay, let's just this is coming from Madam Lau Meiying. Says how to practice oneness.
These are terms that have come from different eras. To my understanding, I have been studying the Dhamma for a little over 30 years. So when I come across these terms, I see a lot of different influences from different parts of the Dhammic history as it moved out of India, even within India, before it left and gone to other places, let's say in China, Tibet, Afghanistan, etc. It was taking on many of the characteristics. However, using my own understanding of what this term would mean or have meant for me in my own spiritual progress over the years, because prior to the Dhamma, I used to practice other traditions, Taoism, Hinduism, etc., Tantrism, and as well as within the different schools of the Dhamma, Mahayana, Vajrayana, etc., Zen. So I see elements of those in that word, oneness. However, I will take it back to the earliest available teachings of Lord Buddha, which we find in the Pali Canon, in the Nikayas, and use that. Now, to use the practice part of the question, which is very simple, succinct, and I appreciate such questions that are so short, it talks about what I was referring to earlier in the Dhamma Desana, which is how can I make the Dhamma applicable in my life? So whether you're practicing oneness or you are present in the way you are cutting the onions in the kitchen, or driving your car, or holding a book, or drinking a cup of water, they're all the same. Because you cannot be at only one when you're sitting in meditation. Meditation is present in every aspect, because life does not stop when you sit and meditate. It still continues and carries on when you're sipping that water. When you are using the chopping board, cutting the onions. When you are on call with someone that you do not like. Where is that oneness? So, to narrow it down to something bite-sized that you can take with you, I would refer back to as simple as Anapanasati. And that is, you don't have to complicate things again. Just focus on the area around the air, where the air comes in and out through your nostrils. You can have the whole entire triple gem right there. You can have the embodiment of the Dhamma right there. And you don't have to know much about the Nikayas, the Suttas. Just fully be present there, observing the air come in and go out. Most people who criticize simple things are the ones who've never given it a shot. So if someone comes and says, no, that's ludicrous, that's nothing. Well, if that's nothing, the Lord Buddha would not have encouraged so many incalculable arahants attained through metta and through anapanasati. Simple. I don't know of anything simpler than just observing the cool air go in and the hot air come out, not following the breath, whether it's going in or out, but just observing this part. The teachers say how it's like a guard in front of the palace or the city gates. He doesn't check everyone's papers, but he is standing there observing and knows who's coming in and who's leaving. That is your sati. You want to taste oneness? You want to taste nibbana? The magga, phala, and nibbana? Lord Buddha encourages us to start with sati, and as you maintain that, you will have panya. And so long as your life is based, this practice is based on sila, and you maintain that, you will be in oneness in no time. There were arahants who just became like that, arahants, very quickly. So, how quickly will you attain that oneness? It all depends on your dedication to that simple practice. So I will answer that question in that fashion. So I hope it's satisfactory.
Okay, I think that's another very good practical tip about the meditation practice. There's one question that we want to share. During the Buddha's time, Bhante, is there a similar pandemic kind of situation that is faced then? And what does the Buddha prescribe to the society, wherever he goes around to preach and to share the Dharma during that time, specifically during the pandemic? Believe pandemics are not once off. It happens again and again. So during Buddha's time, is there any takeaways during his time?
Yes, the one really notable example comes from the situation that took place in Vesali, modern-day Vaishali, in India, where the Licchavi princes, they had enough because you had dead bodies on the streets. You had dead bodies in people's homes. There were so many people who were dying. The water was polluted. And so in modern terms, you can call it a very nasty kind of a pandemic. And so they had known about Lord Buddha, and they sent a special delegation to Lord Buddha, who was not in Vesali at the time. And Lord Buddha, so they invited him to come and bring the Dhamma there, because the Dhamma was not there. So this ties in with the question. And because it's two-pronged. Have there been pandemics? This is yes. And then the two is as to what the causes might be. Earlier, I was emphasizing so much on the absence of morality, of sila. There is a major presence of wrong views in the world today. And it's been like that for the last at least 100 years. And we are being sucked into this whirlpool of wrong views. Michaditi. Morality is disappearing. And these were some of the situations that were happening also in Vesali. Now, how did the Buddha address this? He sent the delegation back saying that, yes, I will be coming to Vesali. So they start the preparations. And the princes of Licchavi, who were the rulers of Vesali region. And Lord Buddha gathers all his Arahant disciples as well as all the rest of the Sangha, and they proceed. Now, prior to getting there, the Devas, they showered Vesali with torrential rain. And they say the rain was so intense, was so powerful, that it washed off the dead bodies from the streets. I mean, it's not too strange of an image when you look at pictures from recent history from Spain and other parts of the world, where even cars were being dragged down the streets, let alone dead bodies of human beings. So by the time that Lord Buddha got there, the rains had just stopped, because they knew something was happening, was going to happen. And sure enough, it did. And all the devas and other beings, divine beings, came to be present there. Now, Venerable Ananda, by the direction of Lord Buddha, had one of the young Licchavi princes come with Lord Buddha's bowl. Lord Buddha gave the bowl, and they filled it up with water. So water is a very symbolic element there. And they were going to sprinkle the water as Venerable Ananda, who had a photographic memory, because Lord Buddha had just recited the Ratana Sutta. That is what I would recommend for each of us to practice. When the pandemic started last year, I felt the need to chant it, and I have posted it on my YouTube channel. Back then it was in Wuhan, but then it spread to Milan and other, as far as the hotbeds of the pandemic. So Ratana Sutta, the Lord Buddha chanted, and Venerable Ananda, remember, and so he was chanting it all throughout Vesali in the streets as the young boy was holding the bowl, and they were sprinkling the water in these all around Vesali. And all the negative energy, if you will, the pandemic, disappeared. And Vesali became one of the key centers of the Dhamma in the Buddha Sasana, in the history of the Sasana. And that's someplace where the Buddha always used to go. And the Lichavi princes were staunch protectors of the Dhamma, and they loved the practice. And many of them became bhikkhus as well. So I hope my question, my answer addresses your question.
Yeah, very good. But I think the takeaways, some that I catch is chanting the Ratana Sutta, upkeeping. This is also from the earlier sharing, upkeeping the sati, and then
Sila.
sila, and then practice and maintain sati, and then have a little bit of a more investigate. How we say the discerning mind, rather than just merely accepting everything as it is. I think that is some of the key tips that we take away. We have a few more questions, Bhante. Just hold on. Yeah, this one is by Brother Dilip Kumar. He said, "Thank you for your teaching. My question is, as a beginner, how should I start? What should I follow? Because I'm from India, but I don't have a monastery here."
You are carrying the monastery within you. You are carrying the Dhamma in you, in your heart, wherever you go. Even if you go to an arid desert where there's not a single evidence of life, the Dhamma is not in books. It's not in textbooks or in ola leaves, palm leaves. Of course, these are wealth, these are resources that we can use, but the Dhamma cannot be captured by these things, let alone a monastery that is made of brick and mortar. Yes, again, bhikkhus and bhikkhunis could live in these places, and they're very supportive because it puts a roof over our heads, but they are not the Dhamma. The Dhamma is in our hearts. So are the kileshas, the defilements. So I chose today the Anapanasati practice because it's very succinct, very short, very simple, and anyone can do it. I didn't have enough time, otherwise I would have delved into the metta practice. I usually give metta practice because we are all feeling beings, but given the brevity of our time, I decided to focus more on the breath meditation, which is, again, you can be from any part of the world, India or Zimbabwe, it doesn't really matter. You can apply this. So just follow the breath. Now, after I said that, it's always good to support yourself. And I'm sure because of the question that tells me that you have access to the internet. So joining some type of a website where you can gain access to the suttas, specifically, let's say, verses of the Dhammapada. I know the late Venerable, great leader, Venerable Keshri Dhammananda of Buddhist Mahavihara, in fact, I love his version of the Dhammapada. It's so beautifully done. And in fact, I took the liberty of a few years ago where I recited every word in that beautiful treasure of a book, both the Pali and the English, and it's online, but so you can listen to it, but you can also read these verses. So if you can just remember one of them, just one of them, because life is difficult and it's hard sometimes to keep focus, to keep your trajectory. So you need to anchor yourself. Having said that, sila is very important, because you cannot practice while you're breaking the precepts, while you're lying, while you're stealing, while you're killing, while you're harming. So the very first things, 5 precepts, training yourself not to kill or harm beings on purpose, not to take what is not freely given to you, not to engage in any sexual misconduct, not to tell lies or speak falsehood, and not to take intoxicants that delude the mind. Anything that causes intoxication, including cigarettes, by the way, because they're very addictive, as well as betel nuts. I know in India they use that a lot. So, and elsewhere in Thailand and Burma, also in Sri Lanka as well. So when you practice sila and you're watching the breath, automatically your trajectory gets to be fixed. And there is discernment coming in. There's panya, insights, what we call vipassana. So I hope that answers your question. And as you practice more and more, and you're able to stay in your sitting posture, let's say. Sitting posture is also very important. Start sitting for half an hour. If you can't, sit for 10 minutes. But don't stay just with 10 minutes. Be curious. I wonder if I could sit 5 more minutes. I wonder if I can sit 5 more minutes. And then all of a sudden you're sitting for 1 hour. And try to smile more. And give it away. Give it away. Even if you don't know the person. Give it away, because you're going to give them a gift of smile. And the smile is a gift that keeps on giving and coming back to you. And you can change the world around you. Even if you're not feeling well, by the way, at that moment. But you will feel great, I guarantee it, after you give that smile away. So it teaches you dana as well. So I hope that answers your question.
Wow, but the very practical tips, and something that I can also integrate in my life more. It's a very good refresher, actually, what you shared. And I think the giving out smiles is good, because sometimes my face is not smiling as much, and people misunderstand. But I think, like you rightly point out, smiling more is like a form of dana, and also a form of would say like metta, right? Because
Yeah.
you're demonstrating friendliness.
Absolutely. And they've done research years ago, and in one of my previous talks recently, I've mentioned this. A smile indicates several things to others around us. It shows acceptance. It shows confidence. It shows happiness. And, these are just a few of these things that happen. So confidence in yourself. Acceptance of yourself and the other person. I don't care who you are, where you come from, but I am accepting you as evidenced by my smile. I don't care about your views on things, but I'm accepting you. That makes us feel very comfortable. Today we have a world, despite our so-called sophisticated technologies and this and that advancements, but we do not accept each other. There's so much dosa, there's so much hatred. There's so little sila. How can there not be a pandemic?
Yeah. So Bhante, can I just sorry to interrupt, but can I attribute this current pandemic that we are facing in a big way? And this is like one of the biggest pandemic I've seen in my lifetime, at least. To have working from home for about 14 months now. So this is by far the most challenging period of many of our lives. Some is finding it a blessing to work from home, but in my case, the lack of interaction is really coming. But do you think that the fact that this pandemic occurred could have got something to do with collective karma? Like there is so much corruption ongoing. I don't know how to say it or begin with, but could this be the result, of the collective karma in a negative way? And and as such, there must be an antidote to it.
Yes, and absolutely. I would say yes to every element of that question, because there is a lack of individual responsibility, because we have given away our freedoms. First of all, freedom of faith, we have given it up. So earlier I was focusing on venerating technology. We have become blind believers in it. Anything that comes out of technology, we never question it. We accept it blindly, wholeheartedly, with both arms open. And we have been questioning, on the other hand, our humanity and our relationship. There's so much emphasis on AI, for example, today. People are now being expected to blindly accept and celebrate AI. Well, who is creating the AI? People who are drenched in the kileshas, drenched in defilements, in lives that are completely immoral, lacking virtue. Well, if this thing that is going to be manufactured by me, who is so corrupt, I have no values, well, what is this going to be turning into? You know, the fruit does not fall too far from the tree, as the old saying goes. So, pandemic, the same thing. We have been too self-absorbed in our views, and usually nowadays it's just a conglomeration of wrong views everywhere you look. But at the same time, it can also be having some element of positivity. And what I mean by that is people are forced to stay indoors. And when you are living like that, it forces you not to have as many distractions as you used to have. Going to the bar, going to here, going to the movies, going there. Running away basically has become a more and more difficult trick to pull off. But what have we been doing instead? We've been using the phone. We've been using social media. And we've become even more depressed because we are not going inside ourselves to watch and observe the mind, because that is the only place where we can find true refuge, true security from not just this pandemic, from anything else. So what you have here is a very targeted to the way we think about ourselves. So there's a lot of self-disparagement that we also have been infested with through what we have been exposed in the media for the last several decades. So this is not a surprise for me, because there has been an indoctrination on a massive scale, because people have been worshiping the tube, the TV, and now the internet. People have not been taking responsibility. We don't even know how to relate to one another. I've actually been in rooms where children were sitting across from each other, and they were using iPads to communicate. They didn't know how to relate to each other through eyes, through touching. And that's another thing that has been taken away from us. So it is very interesting, I would even say sadistic, in the way things have been turning into, where we have not only been disassociated from ourselves, but from each other, and vice versa. And that is a very dangerous territory to be in. And that is why I have been feeling more and more of a need to really put the message out there, to bring in Dhamma now before it's too late. Because the only cure that I find is not some drug that these profit-oriented drug companies keep making billions and billions and billions of dollars. And what happens with these people who take these shots? Many people die, and some people don't die, and they feel good about it. Great. But they're never accountable. They don't care. They don't care if people die or not die. They're thinking about one thing, about their pockets, about their limitless bank accounts. I care about what happens to the human mind, to our society, to our culture. And what we have here is the Dhamma that can actually revert the attention back to the person. And this pandemic is going to go anyhow. We've seen far worse. In biology, we know this for a fact. Years ago in the University of Marseille, they discovered that organisms, biological organisms, all started from a single virus. They called it the supervirus. They even named it Mimi virus. This is about 15 years ago or so. So we are the product of a virus. So don't worry. Ultimately, the immune system, your white blood cells will take care of it, but you need to have your due diligence to practice. You need to use common sense. Protect yourself, of course. But we can protect ourselves starting with Sila, Samadhi, Panya. We cannot undermine these things. The Dhamma is so powerful. It's more powerful than any pandemic. Because the real pandemic is not Corona or this or that or the flu. It's not that. The real pandemic that has been with us is avidya. That is the real pandemic. And that's what the Buddha came to help us wake up to. And he gave the cure. That's the Dhamma. But what we do is we have stapled that Dhamma, the prescription of it, we made it bigger, laminated it, and stapled it on our forehead, and we walk around thinking, yes, I have the Dhamma, I know the Dhamma. No, we don't know the Dhamma because we don't practice the Dhamma. We don't practice the Dhamma. You cannot know without practice. It has to be utilized. It has to be brought in. And it's not in robes. It's not in the shaved head. It's not how many years I've sat and meditated. It's none of those things. How often have I been able to maintain my awareness of the breath, for example, continuously? Can any of us sit for 24 hours straight, maintain sati of the breath, uninterrupted? Can we do that? Let's try it. But as we're trying it, we're going to see some miracles happen. And anyhow, what are we afraid of? A pandemic or no pandemic? This body is designed to die. See, this culture has given us this false conception that we have to preserve this body at all costs and freak out meanwhile. Well, the body is going to die. Yeah, we all know that. But pause for a second. This is anicca. It's made of bones, veins, arteries, sinews, all that gunk, the fat, and it's going to be burnt and it's going to be gone. A bag of bones. That's what we are. Touch your cheeks. Do you see that solid thing underneath? That is a bone. It's called a cheekbone. Inside this, it's hollow, eventually. The brain, it's a hollow cavity, otherwise, the skull. So we need to realize the reality of life, the factualness of this thing called a body that is temporary. So more so than the pandemic, my concern is, how am I using this body? Because even if a person gets the virus and overcomes it, by the way, because I've seen enough research to say that it's actually in the upwards of 90 percentile, the survival rate. I've studied science. A lot of people are talking about science, and I'm like, what part of this argument or conclusion you're making in front of all these millions of people is scientific? I fail to see that. But because of their posture and their clout, they're selling that. I'm not minimizing the deaths. But we need to take responsibility to do our research in an unbiased way. Because there's so many fingers involved in this. And it's all about money at the end of the day. And we have to take note of these things. But I'm not going to get into that. My concern is, how is this affecting my level of commitment to making the most out of this life in this body, which, by the way, is impermanent, is going to go decrepit, it's going to get all disgusting and die. While I'm alive, can I attain the fruits of the Dhamma? That should be the question. not extending the life of this body. Because you might say, yes, I'm free of the virus, I'm immune to it, and then boom, a bus comes and hits you and you're dead. And we all know that you are going to die. As the same goes for your loved ones, my loved ones. So we need to be mature. We need to really be using our discernment here and stop acting like children, buying whatever people are dangling in front of us as the truth. It's not the truth. These are wrong views. This is why we have the first step of the Noble Eightfold Path, samadhi, and there is not enough samadhi in the world today. Everybody has an opinion, but unfortunately and sadly, many of these voices come from the Buddhist world as well. People are not applying samadhi. So let's, at least in our own life, let's take some responsibility and live with some samadhi. We won't regret it, and we will make the most of this life, which is temporary. The Dhamma that we have today, the teachings, unfortunately, that part, because we're human beings, that also is temporary. We're losing it. We need to breathe life into it through our own decision to maintain it alive through the practice of Sila, Samadhi, Panya. And how we think is crucial, absolutely crucial. If you want to save yourself and save your loved ones, bring them back to the Dhamma proper. That is my encouragement.
Wow, Bhante, that is a very profound sharing, in my point of view. And I have a few key takeaways. Is that actually the bigger pandemic is not the pandemic that we see now, the corona, it's avijja.
Sadhu.
And the antidote, yes, I mean, you have the vaccines for the virus, but the antidote, the bigger antidote is the Dharma itself. And a lot of things that we see now come and goes, is impermanent, is temporary. Even this body is temporary, but we make full use of our time while we are still around to internalize the Dhamma, practice and uphold it. Yeah. So, and of course, have the discerning mind and not just buy into everything. That's very good advice.
Wonderful.
But there is some questions also we are taking away. We will try and entertain a few more. We are mindful of the time. But today, a lot of people turn up. They are all listening still. Thank you, audiences. So we'll run a few more questions before we end the session. All right?
Sure.
Okay. So this is from Sister Lau Meiying. Swami Vivekananda had mentioned, intense such dedication, concentration on breath. At the tip of the nose, one can smell amazing fragrances. Can Bhante elaborate a little bit about it, please?
When you travel in a car, or when you're going somewhere, walking on a street, going to a certain destination, you will see many signs, many signs, signposts, this and that. You will see many different scenery. So long as they are not your primary destination, they're nice, you look, you acknowledge, but then you need to move on. So again, Swami Vivekananda happens to be of a different faith. However, from that question, from the way you phrase it, these are things that can happen, yes. And there's many different realms. And they can also be nimittas, what we have in the practice, nimittas or signs. But if you and I were at the feet of Lord Buddha, and we would ask a question like that, he would smile and say, ignore, they're not your destination. They're nice. They're like, I like to call them as gifts. Gifts that you're on the right path. But don't give it too much credence other than that. The problem I've seen with my students, meditators over the years, is that sometimes it can be so captivating. Sometimes people see lights. So you chose the word, the fragrances. Yes. Other people might actually hear sounds, certain sounds. Some people have certain sensations in the body. As the concentration is becoming stronger and stronger, different, because you're putting the mind, you're collecting the mind to a point. If you are practicing the Dhamma. Now, again, Swami Vivekananda was not a Dhamma teacher, Buddhist teacher. His path was different. So this is in no relation to what he has taught. So we need to be able to, first of all, distinguish between teachings. There isn't one, simply because he's known as a spiritual teacher, then his teaching should match the Dhamma, the Buddha's teaching. No. Be careful of that way of thinking. They're not. So we need to really have an understanding from the get-go, from the start. So what I come from is the path that has been practiced from the time of Lord Buddha. So whatever I shared with you, I tried my best to come from there, and obviously supported by my own experiences and my research in the suttas and commentaries, etc. So the bottom line is this. In this practice, we need to understand why we are practicing. So the Four Noble Truths have to be there, a clear understanding. Meaning, there is dukkha, and then there is the cause, the arising. We ask the question, why is number one there? Why is the first noble truth there? So that's the second noble truth, understanding the cause, samudaya. Then there is nirodha, which is the cessation, the ending. There is an ending to suffering. Perfect. But what is the end? How? That's the how, the fourth one, which is the magga, the attangika magga, the eightfold, noble eightfold path. That is what we're practicing. And it has 8 parts to it. Sammaditi is the first one, the right view. Then we come samma sankappa, the right thinking, the right intention. Earlier that's what I was mentioning in the desana. Then the vacha, samma vacha, the speech. What kind of a speech am I having? Then the kammanta, the action, samma kammanta. Then there is the ajiva, the lifestyle. What kind of a lifestyle, livelihood do I have? Do I sell drugs? Do I sell poison? Do I make weapons so that other people could use to kill others? Am I in the business of spreading gossip? All bad lifestyles. Then there's samma vayam, the effort, the right kind of effort, engagement in doing these things. And then there is sammasati, the right kind of mindfulness. And this is what I want to link up your question to, because in this practice, we practice Lord Buddha's teachings, not what Swami Vivekananda said. But that doesn't mean that a person who's practicing the Anapanasati doesn't have that kind of an experience, or let's say something else like lights or sounds or nothing. That doesn't mean that they're not progressing. That's why they need to be under the supervision of a teacher, and they need to practice the teaching instead of mixing and matching, which is another thing that I've noticed students like to do. Because there are so many resources out there, many people are misguided to think that we can just add them into a salad bowl and make up my own path. No, don't do that, because you're going to be lost in the labyrinth and get nowhere. So these are like lollipops or like ice cream. They're not the real destination. So if you have something like that, or somebody you know, whatever, great, but move on, continue, because that is not the destination as far as we're concerned, as far as the Buddha's teaching is concerned, the Dhamma, because perfect awakening is what we're after. But at the very least, Sotapanna stage, entering the stream, which once you do, which is basically seeing with the eye of Dhamma, your faith becomes unshakable. Nothing anyone says or gives to you will ever make you relinquish your faith in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, because you know it in your core. It's deeper than your DNA. Unshakable faith. That's established. And that's why the person cannot have any more than 7 lives, and they can never fall down below a human birth. Never. You will never fall into the hell realms, never into hungry ghosts, Peta realms, or the asuras, or the animals. Never. So I wish that upon you and to all practitioners, at the very least, to attain Sotapanna stage.
Thank you, Bhante, for the encouragement. And I think just now you share also a very good tip that it's best not to, there is a lot of techniques, there's a lot of teachers, and not to mix and match. I feel that, my view, this can be another topic that you can, because there is a lot of techniques out there. And I think it's really good to have like a guidance on how to maneuver with so many techniques that's coming our way, how to maneuver in this, because sometimes, we are listening and we're absorbing. But it'd be great if there's someone who can shed a light, how we can maneuver around the many techniques out there and, stick to that path, towards, the ultimate. Yeah, Bhante, we have 1 or 2 more questions and we'll wrap up, but let me run through one more. This is by Sister Siu Im. Her question is pretty concise. Is it, Bhante, is life nothing but a big dream conjured by the mind? Yeah.
Try to say that, or to try to tell that, or convince yourself of that statement when you bang your foot, your big toe, against the table. Can you convince yourself that it's a big dream? Now, I'm not trying to trivialize your question, but I'm also trying to draw the importance to the living experience. What you have here is, again, a question that comes from different philosophical schools that we can even find all the way back at the time of the Buddha, because you had some of these philosophies come at the feet of Lord Buddha in the form of very notable Indian philosophers. I mean, today we think that in the Western philosophy, this and that, we have the brightest minds or we have great ideas, but no, they're basically footnotes of what existed back then in ancient India, for example. And this is one of them. The big mirage, or Maya as they call it, the delusion. But what do we do with that? There's obviously some truth to this, yes, but the Buddha is always, the emphasis that Buddha had about these things was, okay, stop being in your head, because these are all plays of the mind. I call this, or these things, mental acrobatics. The ego loves this. Meanwhile, nothing gets done. Nothing gets done. I met one time a person in robes who said something like this. And I looked at him, and there's so much delusion there. There's michaditi, because the person is relying, he has chosen a concept as his refuge. And that is dangerous. Because when you go and pinch this person, they're going to scream at you. They're going to say, ouch, ouch. Just like you're going to say ouch when you stub your toe against the table. Where is all this Maya business then? Nowhere. But the delusions, especially the kileshas, the defilements, love this kind of thinking. Philosophers love to think, and they are absolutely useless. I've studied philosophy. I once actually was pursuing a PhD degree in it until I decided, no, I'm going to switch. So I've spent a few classrooms, to say the least, about the years I've spent, the books I've read, and arguments and all that. But ultimately, it's very good for the ego. good for who comes out as the winner in this debate. But the person is empty. They are still experiencing what? Dukkha. So, I said earlier that there are some elements of truth in this. Of course. These are later philosophical schools that came up later on, and even in Buddhism we see in the Yogacara schools and whatnot. But ultimately, philosophers never became awakened, as far as I'm concerned, as far as the data that I've come across. Practitioners have attained. Practitioners of the Dhamma can attain. So my emphasis will always be, my answers are always going to lead back to that ocean, just like the rivers, rivulets, the streams going there. Because my encouragement to the student is always, please, please, please come down from here, down to the body, to your heart. Let's check what's inside here. Let's focus on what it means to have Maya, this whole delusion business, mirage. Let's talk about that. And use the term anicca. How so? Let's say you meet someone, but you already have made up your mind because you've had many encounters with her or him, and you've already made a judgment about his character, about his views, and already your emotions are bubbling up, good or bad, while you see them. Now, can you bring this whole mirage business, this theory, this concept, into that living experience that you're having at that moment when you're seeing this person in context of anicca? Meaning, can you look at this moment as a genuine, perfectly pure, clean slate of a moment? This is where you can actually make that philosophical statement of delusion or mirage relevant. This is when it can turn into Dhamma, applicable Dhamma, because Dhamma is applicable through and through, completely. The Buddha never told a lie. The Buddha's words are always the truth. And this, one must experience for oneself in the truth that is the Dhamma, and come from there. So when you look at this friend with brand new, fresh eyes, not your eyes from yesterday. Now, here is where the mirage part can really help us. When you can look at your friend and see, yes, the image of you I had yesterday, that is the mirage I see. That's also then what Lord Buddha might have meant by saying anicca. Anicca means what? Impermanent. Impermanency of what? And also anatta in this case. Insubstantiality of what? My image of you, that you are solid, you're a very bad person, or you're a very good person. That three-dimensional, that solid thing that I've created and put you in, there's nothing like that. Things are always changing. Everything that is conditioned is anicca. Sabbe sankhara anicchati, the Buddha says. Every conditioned thing is anicca, is impermanent. So I would see that in the context of impermanence. That's when you can actually turn these heavy-duty philosophical, cut off from the ground type of useless ideas, I would say, and make them useful to you in your life right here, right now, by bringing it into the core teaching of anicca, dukkha, anatta, the three characteristics of existence, which happen everywhere in every encounter you have, whether it's with yourself or with others. So I hope that's useful.
Bhante, not only is highly useful and whatever you shared today is very loaded, I have to play back this after this myself because I want to refresh a lot of things that you share. So this is one sharing that I'll definitely play back again and again. And Bhante, we come to the end, today of the sharing. And I think I want to just put a note out. By the way, to all the listeners today, let's help Bhante to raise funds for his Dharma mission in Hawaii, United States. Bhante does not have a temple right now in terms of support. So let's contribute and donate towards Bhante Dr. Chandana's daily expenses, be it for food, transport, and rent. And please visit the link http paypal.me. We will share the link in a while. Yeah. And Bhante, today is a very good sharing. I have no words, because I can see the audience, they're still in, a lot of them. It's coming to 2 hours. We didn't schedule for 2 hours, but it's coming to that. And I can see that there's a lot of interest to continue listening on. However, we also have to have understanding Bhante has been talking non-stop for coming to 2 hours. So Bhante, we have come to the end of today's sharing, Dhamma sharing. We wish to invite you to kindly conduct the Anumodana, the transference of merits to the dearly departed and to the Devas.
Sister Carolyn, the I like to share this beautiful saying, Dhamma piti sukhang seti, which is basically the joy we get from the Dhamma is incomparable, because of it makes everything else be comfortable. It's almost like lying down. Life becomes a breeze. That's how I would translate that. And it's never a chore when we are sharing the Dhamma. Lord Buddha would go for hours and hours, and the Arya Savakas would go hours and hours. Of course, we don't have that much time, but for helping to the sasana, I would be more than happy to sit for another 2 hours or more. But obviously, given the logistics here, it's not the case. But in the future, if you would choose to, I would be more than happy to participate. So let's do the dedication, Anumodana. Akasatha Jabumata Devanagamahiddika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakhantu Lokasasanam. Akasatha Jabumata Devanagamahiddika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakhantu Desanam. Akasatha Jabumata Devanagamahiddika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakhantu Mampara. Ittavata cham hehi sabbadang punya sampadang sabbe devanumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Ittavata cham hehi sabbadang supunya sampadang sabbe bhutanumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Ittavata cham hehi sabbadang punya sampadang sabbe sattanumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Yeah, Bhante, we have come to the end of this Dhamma sharing. And we, as such, we like to express our deep gratitude, appreciation, and thank yous for this very insightful, I would say, very loaded talk. Yeah, and like I said again, in my case, I will play back, to listen properly. Sponsors also, we would like to thank you, the sponsors for today's Dhamma sharing, and viewers who have spent your time to listen in this Dhamma sharing on this very auspicious and holy day, Vesak Day. Yeah, today's sharing is especially meaningful to all of us, particularly because we are all celebrating Vesak Day, but also like what Bhante say, it's not just once off. We treat this as a special day, but let's internalize the Dhamma learnings daily to the 365 days of our lives every day. Yeah, and again, we take this opportunity to wish all a happy Vesak Day.
Sadhu,
Sadhu, sadhu.
Sukhi Hontu.